I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Who are you?
A single mother and a part-time secretary, put her children to bed and retired for the evening. Her life would never again be the same. The Entity from 20th Century Fox. Rated R. Now playing at a selected theater near you.
Hey, this is Matt once again. What about another review? And this is another request, this time for Jimmie Jordan. Thank you so much for that. If anyone's ever interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, you can either do so by sending in the request directly via my PayPal or by joining my Patreon. The links are down below in the info box. If not, no worries, but if so, thank you. But the review for today is a film I've heard quite a bit about, especially from my friend Mike OCP Communications. I know he's a big fan of this movie. It's The Entity from 1982. Directed by Sidney J. Furie. Well before doing films like Iron Eagle, which I do enjoy, that needs a Blu-ray, and Superman 4, The Quest for Shit, he did the film like this, which I know it has nothing to do with it plot-wise, but for some reason it reminded me of the new Invisible Man movie that came out. Again, it has nothing to do plot-wise, but I don't just... And I mean that in a good way, because I did like that movie. I reviewed it on the channel here. The Invisible Man that came out this year. And this one was a pleasant surprise. Because I heard the idea and I went, okay, it's going to be 2 hours, and it's a little over 2 hours, about this lady being raped by this invisible force. Okay, joy. I mean, it's not supposed to be fun, but I'm like, do I really want to sit here for 2 hours to watch this? But I gotta say, it was an engrossing story. I mean, I know it's based on a true story. How much is true, how much is not, I don't know. I wasn't there. But it's based on a novel about this real occurrence. But what pulled me in was, number one, the direction by Sidney J. Furie was very well done. More than competent. With how the attack scenes were filmed. They were filmed not in a gratuitous manner. They are, I guess you would call them rape scenes, but they're, I view them more as violent attacks. But they're done not in an I spit on your grave bullshit way. They're done in, you still get the viciousness, you still get the seriousness of it, but it doesn't stay on there for so long that you're like, okay, we get it. It's just long enough to show you the viciousness as well as sympathy for our lead character. And that's another thing that this film does well, is the cast. Barbara Hershey did a wonderful job. She was, you felt sorry for her, but she wasn't a damsel in distress, so she had a certain I know one reviewer called it grit, but she was a strong person. See, critics, there were strong women back in the day too, not just nowadays. This film included. I mean, yeah, she was being attacked by this invisible force, but a good point of the film is her standing up and not being afraid and confronting it. But hey, what do I know, right? Critics. I mean, she goes from these violent attacks where she gets slapped and she says, "What the hell?" and her blood on her lip, and she gets violently attacked by this thing. And then by the end, she confronts it and tells it off. Pretty much tells it to go fuck itself. I mean, she doesn't say that exactly, but that's the idea. And then other people, you got Ron Silver, who I like. I mean, may he rest in peace. Ron Silver, very good character actor. He was the bad guy in Time Cop, which I reviewed when I did my Van Damme marathon, where I reviewed pretty much all of Van Damme's movies. He was in another film I reviewed called Deadly Outbreak with Jeff Speakman. He was the villain in that. He was in Silent Rage with Chuck Norris. He was the bad guy in Blue Steel with Jamie Lee Curtis. He plays a psychiatrist who thinks it's all in her head, but then he becomes her friend, and you get the idea he wants more, but nothing comes of it. Which, yeah, I know this is based on a real story, but that does make it more real that nothing comes of it. It's not all of a sudden become a love story in the middle of this invisible rape affair. But yeah, the way it's directed, sometimes there's certain angles used, some nice built-up of tension throughout the scenes. But also the score. The score definitely has to be mentioned by Charles Bernstein. Charles Bernstein did the score to the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which is a great score. He did the score to the original April Fool's Day, another great score. And this, I swear I've heard this music before. I have a feeling this music was used in trailers or something to that effect. Or someone used pieces of this music for something. But it's well done music, especially the moments where this pulsing beat. It reminds me later on when AC/DC did Maximum Overdrive. And you know how they did their ode to Psycho? But it sounded like dun, 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 dun. And I love Maximum Overdrive. I reviewed that. It's one of my personal favorites. This was before that. This felt with that certain pulsing beat hammer when these attacks happen, which really again rises the tension of those sequences. And it's either her trying to, maybe it's all in her head, but then other people view it like her son who's pushed back, and like this weird electricity is around the area. And then she goes to her friend and the fucking place gets blown out. I thought it was a sweet scene where her friend apologizes. I saw it. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I thought that was a sweet scene, which you can't blame the friend for doubting it because it's a crazy thing to believe. But at the same time, it's nice that they actually have a little scene like, "Oh, I'm sorry." That the character regrets that, and there's a little bit of showcasing the friendship. And then Barbara Hershey's just happy, like, "You saw it? Oh my God, you saw it. Like, I'm not crazy." Because you would be surprised how many movies forget those little details. People go, "Well, that's obvious." Well, believe me, there's a lot of movies that don't know what the fuck obvious means in the dictionary. And what I mean by getting into the story was that not just because of Ron Silver's character, which he has a couple good scenes, including when he's talking about, these people, ghosts and demons, were only ideas until people saw them. And maybe you, but he's not trying to be mean. He's not trying to be rude or a dickhead to Barbara Hershey. You get the idea the character really does generally want to help Barbara Hershey. But it's just hard for him to believe in this paranormal stuff. And then the second half of the film, it's almost a little bit like Poltergeist, where the second half of the film, funny enough, the same year, 1982, where the parapsychologists come in and they start studying it. Although I like Poltergeist more as a movie, but this is definitely more tense of a film. I mean, there are a couple moments that don't work. There's a moment where Barbara Hershey like, show yourself, and then you see like this green ball mist thing, which looks a bit hokey in today. I mean, I've seen much worse. Like before that, you had these little like firework lights shoot out, and I didn't mind that. That looked fine. But when you got the green mist ball, it seemed like something out of Star Trek. Like Abraham Lincoln or something else from the original Star Trek going to come out and talk to Barbara Hershey. So I don't know, there's just that whole green mist ball thing with Abraham Lincoln. If you've seen the original Star Trek, you know what I'm talking about. It just seems something of that nature. Like maybe if it was some other effect, or just... I think of Amityville Horror, which I reviewed. We had one thing I didn't mention, and I should have, but the creepy scene with the eyes looking at Margot Kidder. Maybe something subtle like that, or a shadow, and you see a shadow, but it's a giant's shadow. Or, I mean, this is 1982, so we could do practical effects. Maybe some type of practical effect that you see a glimpse of. Other than just this green mist ball that, I'm like, is V'ger going to come out, or the finest baker? I mean, it's just a little thing. It's just a little nitpick. Later on, when the thing is maybe trapped in ice, because they're trying to freeze it, the parapsychologist, I don't know, the wide shot of the thing in ice, I don't know why it made me think of Godzilla. I know that's stupid, but it made me think, oh my god, Godzilla's gonna break out of the ice, or maybe it's Mothra or Team Ghidorah. I don't know why. Just for some reason, the whole thing of ice looked a little bit funky. Because by the third act, they do this experiment where, hey, maybe we can, if it's a physical thing, if this is some kind of physical, like it's being physical with you, but this is not just some psychic projection of yours, but some other physical entity, maybe we could try to capture it. And they do it for like, they do capture for like 10 seconds, but... Now, the explosions and the place coming down, that's well done. Ron Silver helps Barbara Hershey. I liked the way that looked. The wide shot showing to show the whole thing coming down. And you see the real actors coming out and the whole thing. That was fine. That looked good. But I don't know, just the ice thing, it just made me think like Godzilla's son. Whatever the fuck his name was, what the hell was going to come out. So there's certain effects that are just a little bit funky today, in today's age. With that said, though, I do think the movie works because it does keep a nice tension throughout with some good actors, really solid performance by Barbara Hershey. Nice to see Ron Silver, may rest in peace. Alice Rocco, sadly, I believe he's no longer with us. He voiced a couple of characters on The Simpsons. He's been in a lot of other stuff as a character actor. He's not in the film too much, but he plays Barbara Hershey's boyfriend that we see a couple times. The attacks are vicious. Well, I say vicious in intent. It's not blood, guts, gore, thankfully. It's not supposed to be that. I mean, not for this type of movie. But in its intent. But again, it doesn't stick with it to the point it becomes too redundant or gratuitous or, okay, we get it, you can move on. It doesn't go into that realm either. So I thought they were done very well. I said the cast do their jobs well. Charles Bertie's score, very much a big part of the film. It's funny, just a couple of videos ago I talked about how scores, someone had asked me what happened with movie scores of today. I think some of the stuff I mentioned is that scores at times can really help a film or be a soul of a film. This is one of those instances. The score, whether it be the intense moments or the other moments, are a big plus with the movie. It's definitely one of its biggest strengths. And just the trying to get more into the technical aspect with these parapsychologists, and also seeing how this lady becomes a bit stronger and finally standing up to this thing. And so by the end, she's not going to be afraid of it anymore. It's not over. There's even text that says, I guess in real life, this lady, they didn't go away, but they diminished. Although I read somewhere that eventually it did go away entirely. So I don't know if that came out after. How do I word it? Maybe it's while making the film, the attach was still going for what this was based on, the real lady. And maybe years after the film came out, then the attach diminished. I mean, for all I know, it never happened. I never met the girl. Don't know, I wasn't there. But I mean, if this is based on a fictitious story, I would have been fine if the text said that eventually it stopped. I mean, again, this little nitpick. The fact that they went through all this, granted, it made things diminish, but the fact it didn't make things stop makes it seem a teeny bit of a pointless endeavor of this whole second act experiment, freezing it thing just for it to get out and be pissed. So it's like, oh wow, that was a waste of time. But on the flip side, it even says that the attach did diminish, and also it showcases that she's stronger. I mean, there's a moment where it closes the door and calls you the "see you next Tuesdays." You'll figure that out. And she's not going to be afraid anymore, and she stands up to it, and maybe that's really the point of the film. And lo and behold, again, for all these critics that talk about, well, they never did that in the 80s. They always had women as damsels in distress. They always had women being nee. I can name about 50 slasher films where women were strong. I can name 50 movies, period, in the 80s and 90s where women were strong. And the early 2000s. Here's another one. Well, she got raped. Yeah. And you know what she did? She protected her kids. She stood up for herself. She got stronger. And she's like, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to fight this. And I'm not going to be afraid anymore. Not a bad thing to do. Not a bad thing to think about. Don't you think, critics? You social justice warriors. You barracudas. But again, they make it seem as if it's only been a thing. You don't know your movie history. That's the problem with people. They don't know their real history, and they don't even know their movie history. Unless it came out 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. If it's further back, unless they see some, oh, I saw this clip one time on YouTube, they don't know. They don't know. Hey, what can you do? But either way, this was a good film. I thought this was a very solid flick. I was surprised to realize that Sidney J. Furie directed it, because, I mean, I know he didn't call it a horror film. He called it a, supernatural suspense film. It's a horror film. Just call it a fucking horror film. There's nothing wrong with calling it a fucking horror film. Which I can add that to my playlist, which I have a playlist where I reviewed a bunch of 80s horror films. It's, if you want to check it out, go to the channel, click on playlists. A long time ago I started trying to do a marathon, and I realized it's way too fucking many movies. It'll take me way too long. I can't do it. But I did review a lot of them, and I'm still adding more, including this one. So feel free to check that out. Feel free to check out any other videos I've done. Thanks for watching. If anyone ever wants to request pretty much anything video wise, you either send it directly via my PayPal or join me on my Patreon. If not, no worries. See you guys later. Take care. Bye bye.